Rangers fans, welcome to Season 3 of Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney, alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, it is still that time of the year where we do division previews. We are up to the final division preview before we do a Rangers-specific preview next week. We have the Metro also. Rangers played yesterday. That was fun.
I'm going to say this once and one time only. Preseason hockey is for sickos. There is National Football League football on. There are WNBA playoffs on. There are pennant races in baseball going on.
Sure.
I commend those of you who spend time of their Sunday afternoon watching a split Rangers team play a split Bruins team yesterday. You are far more sociopathic than I am. I commend you. I commend your patience and your willingness. I saw quite a bit of conjecture that the broadcast kept confusing Leah Sanderson with Filipino, that they kept referring to the time Capo Caco played in the AHL, and we all know Caco has never played in the AHL. I saw more than one person talking about it on Twitter yesterday, so that gives me an indication of we're already in mid-season form, and we've played maybe a period and a half of preseason hockey.
We got a new scorebook, though. I mean,
I did see that. It looks cleaner. Yes, I'd still like to see shots on goal.
I would like a shot counter. I agree.
A shot counter would be nice. I appreciate the national broadcasts that do have that. But yeah, It's a good to wet the beak for the people who it's hard to get to games. Preseason games present an opportunity to get in the door for $50 to have a little bit of fun in the pre. I commend those of you. For those of us who work in other sports, who have other things going on, it's hard to make time when you got to watch 4 football games at one time and get these tweets off. It's hard.
True.
When you got to
listen. I got to hear Sam Rosen say it's a power play goal, and that sent me to the ninth dimension. So we're having a good time.
And that's what preseason is. It's good to wet the beak, to go through the motions, especially for a team like the Rangers, though. And we'll get to the preview in a second. We got like 9 guys competing for 2 roster spots. So like that's kind of the issue with the preseason. It's not like you're a team like the Flyers where it's, we've got 8 prospects all trying to make the team, and John Tortorella is going to march them off a cliff to teach them what manliness is this week. That's not what we're doing here. We went really far last year. We have maybe 2 guys we think might be able to push for a top 9 spot. We think we're going to give Rempe a 4th line spot out of the gate. And that's really it. There's not really a whole lot to figure out for this team. I saw they sent down one of the goalies again. They sent one of the goalies down today.
Hugo Olas.
Yeah, they cut another goalie down. So at this point, enjoy it. Don't take it too seriously. If anyone is particularly enticing, don't get your hopes up, because they're not going to give them a real chance. We know Osman's not making the team on the 4th line, and more likely than not, they're going to opt for Rempe or Edstrom over Berard on the 4th line. So it would take something drastic for one of those 2 guys to make the team out of camp, or a trade. It's not out of the realm of possibility. You still get that Kako trade that was rumored earlier in the summer, and then that's the path for one of those guys to make the team. But at this point,
Victor Mancini also looked good. I know it's as my phone falls. Victor Mancini looked good. Like, I get it. It's spring season. These things are take these things with a lot of grain of salt. He looked confident with the puck, which is something that I would just keep an eye on. I'm not gonna watch it. I'm sure he's gonna get sent down. I'm sure he's not gonna play in the NHL. But hopefully, people that watch those teams just keep an eye on him. Because the thing about it too is you can't teach confidence when you have the puck on your stick. That's something that's innate. You have to have it in you, and it's preseason. These things don't matter, and you have to, you're showing off your talent. I get that. He looked good, and also he scored a goal. So, I mean, my star of the night is Victor Mancini.
My star of the night is the Liberty, who went up 1-0 in their first round series against the Atlanta Dream, and I'll give a little bit of credit for the late slate of football yesterday. The Ravens making that game against the Cowboys interesting was very nice. But to get to the actual subject matter of today's episode, the Metropolitan Division. This is a weird one. Yeah. All of these teams arguably got worse other than the Devils. Maybe you could say the Rangers are about the same, but it feels like everybody got a smidge worse. Everybody lost guys to varying degrees. It feels like this division, very similar to what we talked about in regards to the Atlantic, that middle class of teams all beats up on each other. The Flyers, the Islanders, the Capitals, the Penguins, that group of teams all beat up on each other. And last year, it's what kept the playoff race so engaging for so long. And then at the top, the Rangers, Hurricanes, and Devils have all alternated winning this division over the last 10. Excuse me, no. The Rangers and Hurricanes have alternated winning this division the last few years, and the Devils have finished top 3 one time in that window. The Islanders have finished top 3 a couple times. The Capitals, the worst playoff team to ever make it in this format, last year got in. The Penguins and Flyers and Capitals are all just kind of hanging out. I think all of those teams have small chances of being playoff teams. Columbus, their young guys are enticing, and we'll start with them.
Yep.
They're young guys. Their top 9, when you go through, they have a lot. And this is very similar to what we said about Utah 2 weeks ago. They have enough young guys that even though all of them obviously aren't going to pan out, they have enough guys that they should be able to piece together a pretty solid group. When you have Fantilli, you have Marchenko, you have Kent Johnston, and then you have all the defenseman prospects you've accumulated over the years, the Blue Jackets should not be as bad as their record was last year. They should have won more games talent-wise.
No.
That Blue Jackets team should be about, I would say, where Pittsburgh and Washington are. It's not great, but it should be a lot more competitive than it was last year.
I like the good core of the young talent that they have, and I think another year of that Fantilli has under his belt, and Marchenko is only going to get better. I really like Kirill Marchenko. I feel like a lot of people are either don't know about Marchenko or sleeping on him because he's on Columbus and they're a bad team, so no one's really watching them. But Marchenko is, he's looking like he's the real deal. Like he's looked really good, and I'm interested to see how that goes for them as well. I mean, the pro, and as I do for every team, as I've done the past few division previews that we've done, I have a pro and a con and a question for every team. The pro is, of course, they're building a core of young talent, which is something that more teams that are bottoming out should be doing now. Like a team like Calgary that should be bottoming out to develop this kind of young core should be following Columbus's path right now.
I will add an addendum to that, though.
Yes.
You do need to eventually take some chances, and they need to be logical. Like,
oh yeah, 100%.
Blue Jackets pushing chips in was, we're going to trade for Provorov and Damon Severson. Like, we should swing a little bit higher than that when we're going to push some chips in. But continue. If you're going to make trades, maybe swing high. Swing for the fences.
Maybe Provorov isn't the ceiling of guys that you should be going after, but that's not the point. The con is they'll probably still bottom out, and that's I think they're going to be a much better team. I think they're going to win more games than they have, especially last year. But I just don't see them winning more games than anybody else in the division. I
could see the Flyers. The Flyers, the goaltending situation really can. And I know the Blue Jackets don't really have great goaltending either.
No,
but that Flyers goaltending situation is it's really unpredictable.
I agree. I think
that's the argument. That's the only team I can really finish.
I can see that happening. I do think there's a world in which the Flyers nearly made the Flyers nearly made the playoffs last year, even though no one expected them to, and they kind of just flamed out at the end. The thing about it too is I kind of don't know what to expect in Fedotov, because he's a massive individual, and the Flyers are really high on him. I kind of don't know where to put the Flyers right now. We'll get to the Flyers here in a second, but when it comes to the Blue Jackets, my biggest question is, y'all good? Everybody doing okay? Y'all okay? Like hockey, hockey is fun and all, but like, you guys good? Like, are we good to jump? Like, are we good to get the puck going and the Gatorade flow or whatever sponsor it is now? Like, is everybody good to do that? Because like that's kind of more important than what happens.
It is quite the traumatic experience. A lot of those guys have been through a lot. There are a lot of guys who signed with that team specifically to play with Johnny Gaudreau. So it's going to be a very uncomfortable first few weeks, first few months. I know it's going to be something that comes in waves like grief typically does. There's not really a one-size-fits-all answer for how to process this. So like you said, all you can hope for is that the guys who need the help they need can get it. And with that, it enables them to go out and play and hopefully play reasonably well. But like you said, hockey is kind of secondary when it comes to that organization, at least for right now. And Eventually, they are going to have to need to be able to focus on playing hockey. But for right now, it's very tender. We're not that far removed, and it's hard to care about hockey when you're dealing with something like that.
I could see a world in which Columbus comes out to a 9-1 start.
Yeah.
Just because of all the emotions that have taken place over the past few weeks. I can see them just coming out and having the team mentality of, we're going to do this for Johnny. We're going to do this for the family. We're all going to come out. We're going to play the best hockey of our lives. I can, there's a world, I don't know how well that would translate over 82 games, but there's a world in which they come out and they kind of just set the world on fire because they have, all this emotion and they have to release it somewhere.
Yeah. We have seen the power of trauma in sport be able to bond people together and make something extraordinary happen. It's not out of the realm of possibility. The Blue Jackets are a decently talented team. They still need more, but they are trending in the right direction. They have made reasonably smart additions the last few off seasons. I really like the trade acquiring Jordan Harris for them. If their defense is reasonably passable, this team should be competitive. I'm not saying good, but they should be a lot closer to mediocre than bad like they were last year. Next up, the Flyers, who, like you mentioned, came out of the gate very, very hot, very unexpectedly, and they ran out of gas. They were rode one goalie basically the last 2.5 months of the season, where Samuel Ersson made every start except for 2 down the backstretch. They ran out of gas. They were a top-heavy team. They were very competitive. They played a hard-nosed forechecking style that made it very difficult to break out against, that really limited what teams were able to do offensively, that was able to make up for their lack of talent. Now, they've got some of their blue chip pieces in the mix in Michkov. You have young pieces like Morgan Frost, like Owen Tippett, and Travis Konechny's a little bit older, but he still counts. You have Joel Farabee, you have Bobby Brink. The Flyers have really put it together slowly. The problem I have with the Flyers, and the reason I'm going to remain skeptical, is what we were just talking about in regards to Columbus, is their goalie room is basically unpredictable because neither of those guys has a big sample size. Ersson's most extensive experience was last year. And their defense is just like 6 question marks, like objectively. Like, I like Travis Sanheim. I like Cam York. I like Jamie Drysdale. I don't know if any of those guys is actually good, or if I am taking my preconceived notion of what I thought they would be into my consideration. Like, Sanheim has been reasonably decent at the NHL level, but at the same time, I feel like he probably should be a bit better than he is already. It's complicated. They're a weird roster. They're trending in the right direction. I think they're very similar to what we were saying about Columbus, and I think they're very similar to what we were saying about Montreal last week, where slowly acquiring pieces, slowly integrating your young pieces. I think by the time they're ready to be a serious team, Tortorella's not going to be the coach anymore. They probably solidify that goalie position, and they probably got to get a franchise defenseman in there, because those are my 3 biggest question marks for them. They don't really have a goalie. They don't even have like somebody who's like a tandem goalie. Like, if they had talked themselves into like 37-year-old Cam Talbot to tandem with Ersson, I'd be like, okay, that's high risk, but at least Cam Talbot can be passable at the NHL level, whereas you're going with somebody who has 50 NHL starts, 40 NHL starts, and somebody who has like 3. That's really unpredictable, especially for that position behind a not great defense.
The Flyers are very interesting to me because I don't know what Ivan Fedotov is capable of. And that makes the team extremely volatile. Because out of the blue, Fedotov could be an amazing, goaltender, and he could start 50 games, win 30 of them, and the Flyers are a playoff team, and he could have a .920 save percentage, and the Flyers are off and rolling. Or he could struggle, and Ersson has to play a bunch of games again, and the Flyers don't have a third string goaltender to kind of tandem with, like you were saying, and he's going to tire out down the stretch, and they're going to have to rely on Fedotov or trade for one of Detroit's 17 goaltenders and bring in that kind of carousel, and that's not good for anybody either, to carry 3 goalies all the time. So I think a lot of the Flyers season, unironically, hinges on Ivan Fedotov, which is a strange thing to say to somebody that has, 3 games of NHL experience. Like, he hasn't been here for a long time, and yet unironically, it kind of like it does make sense to me to say that, because if he's good and the Flyers can really rely on him, one, that puts a lot less pressure on Ersson to play a bunch of games, and also that gives the team a lot of confidence of, oh, okay, well, we've seen that Ersson can play well. Oh, also, this new guy that we brought in that nobody knows about, he's also really good. Also, he's like a 6'8" behemoth, and he's terrifying to play against. So now all of a sudden you got two goalies that can play well, and now, and the team in front of them can play a lot with a lot more confidence as well. So the Flyers are an interesting team. I mean, the pro is Michkov is here and he's perfect. Like that, the Flyers really wanted him here, and they threw a whole bunch of hoops and all the bureaucracy. He's here, and hopefully for them he turns out to be everything that they want and more. I mean, the con is like they're not bad. They're also, besides the goaltender volatility, they're not amazing. Like they're gonna be competitive, but I kind of don't know where their ceiling is this year. And the question, I guess, is what is their goal? Like, what is the
build? It's a building year.
What is sure, but in terms of standings points and what they want to do at the deadline / April, what is their best case scenario? If you're the Flyers management and you're in that meeting, what do you say is the goal? That's my question to them, because they're a little bit of a strange team.
Their over-under is 85.5. They had 87 last year. You need at least 94 to be in sniffing distance of the playoffs. I don't think the Flyers, as currently constructed, are going to be in sniffing distance of 94, 95 points to get that second wild card in the Eastern Conference. They will be reasonably competitive, and I think they're going to be one of the teams around the deadline where if they can find a taker for Ristolainen, because that's the last year of an expiring, they'll probably do that. If they can find any value, I know they gave Lawton that contract, that is a textbook example of what we always talk about, where nobody's actually trading a first-round pick for Scott Lawton, but Scott Lawton's agent wants it be known that the Flyers are open to trading for him. That one of the most textbook and blatant examples. It's not quite 2 summers ago when 32 Thoughts was saying the Rangers were going to give up a first-round pick for Nick Delorier, but it's in the same conversation of ridiculousness that happens only during the dead of summer or the dead of January when there's no actual news to report, because no GM is actually being proactive in doing their job. They all wait till the last minute to do the trades, the day of the deadline, as opposed to trying to get their ducks in a row and give their guys as many games as possible to get in a row. The last thing I wanted to get in on the Flyers, and it's going to be a building year. Their goal is to be competitive, to hang around, to get these guys real experience, to integrate all of these pieces and see who fits with who. I know there's been conjecture about Frost maybe being a candidate for a change of scenery because he doesn't really fit what Tortorella wants. He's a good hockey player. That's somebody I want to see how he fits. I want to see if Farabee can kind of force himself back into the conversation as the best forward on that team, because when he's right, I would argue he probably is the best forward on that team. Somebody I'm very interested in as a hockey player who I think is pretty good. And then I want to see Michkov. I want to see how much rope they give him. If it's a Tortorella Kreider situation of, well, he doesn't play the way I want it, so too bad, and we do this for 2 years, or if he's afforded the graciousness of being able to make mistakes at the NHL level. We'll see. It feels like it's unfair to say it's still the same Tortorella, because he's very clearly changed in some respects to his abrasiveness, but at the end of the day, he did also healthy scratch Couturier last year for no real reason and refused to acknowledge why he did it either. So as much as you want to say it's a different Tortorella, that the same guy who asked Brooks to fight him at the bus stop is still in there somewhere. Next up, in terms of the over-under totals,
I want a 30 for 30 on that. I would pay money to see that.
Next up on the over-under totals is the Washington Capitals. Backdoored feels generous into a playoff spot last year. Had absolutely no business being in the playoffs. Like, if anything, they should have given that 8th spot to the Kings, excuse me. Who was the 8th team? Oh, St. Louis. St. Louis was the first team out in the West last year. They felt more deserving than that Washington team. That was Charlie Lindgren, and that was really it. Like, even Ovechkin had like 8 goals at the All-Star break. And then he scored like 20 something in the second half to get over 30 again. But they made some interesting moves. You bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois, you trade for Jacob Chikrin. It feels like they are trying their very best to whatever it takes to get Ovechkin over the goal line. And then we'll figure it out from there. I like their young pieces. Like, I like Connor McMichael. I think LaPierre is decent. They've taken some interesting flyers on guys over the years, like Dylan Strome and Sonny Milano. The Capitals have the potential to be annoying. I think the best move they made all offseason was signing Matt Roy, the free agent defenseman from the Kings, because they desperately needed help on their back end. But on paper, this team is like very, very average. I don't think there's really any elite talent on this team anymore. Their best player is probably John Carlson, and he's only helping you on one end. The other end, he's giving you absolutely nothing. I think this team's fortunes are entirely tied to the goaltending. If Charlie Lindgren is above average to very good, they'll be in the mix again. But I don't think a Charlie Lindgren, Logan Thompson combo is going to be able to give them 9-15 like they had last year and get them in, because the defense is still kind of eh. And they're not going to outscore their issues. That's kind of the thing. Their defense is questionable, which leads me to believe they're going to need to score a lot of goals. And I just don't see a lot of chance creation here. I think they'll score because they have a lot of good offensive talent, but I don't think they have enough offensive talent to mitigate their defensive questions.
A lot of Washington's changes make sense.
Yes.
And that's the one thing, that's the biggest thing I'll give Washington. They bring in Mangiapane. They bring in Brandon Duhaime. They bring in, they bring in Jacob Chikrin. Like these guys, and Matt Roy, who we can't forget as well. These are guys that are going to make the team better. Brandon Duhaime and Taylor Radish, and you got to round out the fourth line, sure. But Mangiapane, Chikrin, and Matt Roy are three additions to the team that instantly make the team better. Before it gets to the con, the biggest question I have is Pierre-Luc Dubois going to remember he's good at hockey? Because he forgot in LA. Is he going to forget? He kind of forgot in Columbus. Is he going to remember in Washington? Because he's on that massive contract, and if it doesn't work out in Washington, where else is it going to work unless a team just wants to buy him out? Like, given his current cap structure, because he's making $1 bajillion a year, there's no other team, I would have to think, that is going to trade for Dubois unless Washington retains 50%, maybe. And they probably, even then, might have to go into Sweden or make that happen if Pierre-Luc Dubois, once again, kind of doesn't put in, all of the chips that we've seen that he has on the table. It's one of those things where he has a really good hand at the poker table, but instead of putting, going all in, he's kind of being super, super passive about it and not going in when he has to go in. And it just leaves people scratching their heads when they're watching the game unfold. So can you remember that he's good? Because he is good. He has the talent. He has the ability to make things happen. It's all a matter of whether he's actually going to put it forward on the ice. And the con is, as long as you're faster than Tom Wilson, this isn't a particularly scary team. And as long as you can avoid the Tom Wilson check to the head, then you should be all right when you play them. Mangiapane makes the team better. Matt Roy makes the team better. Chikrin makes the team better. But they weren't a scary team to play beforehand. And while these changes do make them a little bit more of a dangerous opponent, by how much? By what is it about these the additions, and what is it about the team as currently constructed that makes you go, oh, I don't want to play them? And I don't have that sense when I look at the roster right now.
The Pierre-Luc Dubois take, and I've said this before on the show and I'll repeat it now. If you're the Capitals, you probably have 1 to 2 more seasons. If Ovechkin breaks the record this year, there's a good chance he just retires after this year. I know he's got another year on his contract, but I think he's also realistic. I know he's also talked about wanting to play a season or 2 in the KHL when he's done with the NHL. So if he can score the 42 or 43 goals, it's one of those 2 numbers, I forget which one, to pass Gretzky for the record this season, I think there's a good chance he retires after this year. If not this year, definitely after next season when he would break the record. You're probably going to be bad. And on the chance that Pierre-Luc Dubois does remember he's very good at hockey, you have a good hockey player. And if he doesn't, you have a bad team. And it doesn't really matter because it won't be your problem. You won a Stanley Cup as the general manager. You're going to have Ovechkin, Backstrom, and maybe Oshie and John Carlson's numbers to retire. from the most successful period in the history of your franchise. You can probably throw Braden Holtby in there as well. One of the defining, if not the singular defining team iteration of the
Green get a does Green get a number?
Mike Green?
Mike Green.
No, Mike Green wasn't on the team that won the cup.
Yeah.
No, if anything, you could. If you wanted to throw someone else from that team, it's Tom Wilson. He's not that good.
I don't know why I said Tom Green. Yeah, Mike Green.
I was like Tom Green, the middle reliever from the late '90s. No, but yeah,
confused Wilson with Green. But yeah,
you've done everything you've set out to do. If you are the Capitals general manager, you won your cup. You got the most successful period in the history of your franchise. You got like 3 President's trophies in there. You have the most prolific goal scorer in the history of the sport. You got one of the best European-born players of all time in Nick Backstrom. You're stamped. You're certified. It is entirely the next guy's problem. They, like Pittsburgh, who we're about to talk about, as soon as the all-time generational talents go away, it is going to be very lean for a very long time. And we always say, the longer you stave off that inevitable pain, the more prolific and intense that pain is going to be. Because of the nature of staying competitive. We'll switch gears and we'll start talking about Pittsburgh now, who's next up at 90.5, who missed the playoffs for the second year in a row. Pittsburgh is eminently fascinating because very clearly they have talented hockey players. We all agree Mike Sullivan is one of the better coaches in the NHL.
Agreed.
But for 2 straight years, it just hasn't worked. And it's for like weird stuff. Like last year, they couldn't figure out a power play that had 4 future Hall of Famers on it. Like, I don't understand how you couldn't figure something out. And like, that doesn't even include Jake Gensel, who was there the first half of the season. You had a power play with Gensel, Crosby, Malkin, Erik Karlsson, and you couldn't find a way to make it work. They were the worst power play in the league for the first 50 some odd games of last season. And that's with multiple future Hall of Famers on it. I don't think it's great that they replaced Tom Reardon with David Quinn. I know Mike Sullivan and David Quinn are boys, and that's great. I don't think you want to see what the defensive impacts of David Quinn coaching Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson are. I'm telling you, you don't want to know what those are.
I agree.
They have talent. They made some interesting offseason decisions. I still don't exactly understand why Kyle Dubas kind of punted this summer. And look, I get it. It's to go all in next summer, but like, how much are you really going to be able to do in one offseason to maximize the last year of the Crosby, Malkin, Letang trio? This team is fine. It's not good. Sid will put up 100. Sid will flirt with 100 points. Malkin, if he plays 75-ish games, he should be close to point per game. Letang and Karlsson should both be 60, 70 points. Tristan Jarry is a fine regular season goalie. He'll get the wins. He'll be around 9-10 save. He was genuinely pretty good for them last year, but like, at what point did we all acknowledge that this isn't working anymore? It's been 2 straight years of everybody's talented. We like the coach, but we're not getting the results. At what point does Kyle Dubas have to say, I like everyone here, and I know we owe Mike Sullivan for the next 3 years, but like, I got 2 more years of Sid, Malkin, Letang. What do I do? Like, at some point, you got to find some way to shake things up.
The pro for the Penguins is that Sidney Crosby has found the fountain of youth and he's gatekeeping it from everybody else. The con is that he's not sharing that fountain of youth with Malkin. Like, Sid, come on, brother.
Malkin was still fine last year. For 35 years old, coming off of knee surgery.
It's not that he was bad. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying to you is Crosby still is playing at an all elite level. Malkin is still a solid player. I'm not throwing any shit at Malkin at all. However, he has shown more signs of slowing down than Crosby, hence my joke. But also, my biggest question to them is, you're paying Jarry a lot of money. He started 48 games last year, and Nedeljkovic started 33. Who is your starting goaltender?
Jarry.
Right. But why are you doing a tandem if you're paying one goalie a lot more than the other? Because
they were easing Jarry back in off of being injured. That's the other thing. He was kind of coming off of injuries 2 years ago, so that's probably the reason. But I agree with you. They have that goalie situation has always been weird. It's been weird going back to when it was Matt Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury. It's been weird since it was Jarry and Matt Murray. It's weird right now. Every single Penguins fan very much wanted the Penguins to let Jarry walk last summer. And Kyle Dubas said, well, if I let him walk, I'm going to have to sign a goalie off of the carousel who is in that Cam Talbot tier of goalie. And I would rather roll the dice that we can piece together a decent team. And Jari can be a decent regular season goalie. And he was fine last year. But like you said, he only played 48 games. The Penguins have no bottom six. That's really what it comes to. They have no bottom six. Maybe Rutger McGrody gets to make the team out of camp and he's better than what they've had. But
I think he does. I mean, because here's the thing: if he doesn't make the team, who's making it instead of him? Like that's the question that you have to ask: is unless Rutger completely flames out in this preseason and looks really really badly, who is going to usurp him for that spot? Like that spot is his, unless he gives it away, like a bunch of teams gave away the last playoff spot to the Capitals.
I agree with you. McGrody and who's the other young guy they have? Oh, and Cody Glass is another younger guy that they brought in. But I mean, they are entirely dependent on how much their heavy hitters can do. If Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, Jari are all decent, they'll hang around. But their bottom six it's not good enough. You saw it a lot. Let them down. That they just didn't have enough goal scoring, that they got hemmed in their own end for extended periods of time. All right, next up, after Pittsburgh, we go to, very surprisingly, that the Islanders are only at 91.5 standings points, considering they've been in the mid to high 90s for most of the last few years. The Islanders added Anthony Duclair. That's it.
That's it.
They should be better than they were, at least at the start of last season. I think the Islanders are a playoff team.
And Siplikov, I know, because if we don't mention him, Islanders fans are going to be really upset. They also added Max Siplikov from the KHL.
Yes.
They did do that.
Yes. Will they actually use him though? That's the other question. That's another question. That's a great question. That's a counterpoint. The Islanders should make the playoffs. If they get a favorable first round matchup, they might be able to win a first round matchup. But the Islanders are still trying to capture the nobody believes in us magic of 2 and 3 years ago when they made consecutive conference finals. It's not that no one believes in you. It's that it is extremely unlikely that you're going to be able to beat a team that is better than you 3 straight rounds in the playoffs.
Right.
That's the issue. You have a reasonably talented team. Barzal and Horvat are a nice tandem. Brock Nelson is one of the best second line centers in the entire league. You got 25 goals out of Kyle Palmieri last year. I understand why you're confident in your team. You kind of pulled Simon Holmstrom out of the scrap heap of low first round pick who's developed slowly. McLean's kid is a decent third liner. You finally got Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck off of your team, so you might be a little bit faster in your bottom 6. You're very high on Alex Romanov, even if I don't necessarily see that same projection.
I don't see it either, for what it's worth.
I don't really see it there. You're hoping that Pelech and Pulak can both stay healthy, because since signing their respective extensions, they've lost a lot of games to both of those guys being injured. Ditto Scott Mayfield, who missed quite a bit of time last year and should have his jersey retired for the final 10 minutes of the Stadium Series game by the Rangers at some point in the not so distant future. But the Islanders are a safe playoff team. I don't think they have a high ceiling. I don't like playing them because they always play the Rangers particularly well, but they don't concern me. I don't think the Islanders are a heavy hitter by any means. I think they're good. I don't think they're great. I think you would take all 3 of the teams in the Atlantic that we had in playoff spots over them, Florida, Boston, and Toronto. You could maybe even make an argument for Tampa Bay, depending on how Tampa Bay's season goes, but they're fine. I have no problem saying the Islanders are a good team. I just don't think they're great.
The pro for them is Anthony Duclair is good at this hockey thing. And that just makes the team better by default. Him
and Barzal together is going to open up a lot because they're both really fast.
That's going to be fun. Yeah. That's going to be a fun line to watch. And fun and Islanders is not something that has gone hand in hand.
Counterpoint. Their defense last season was so bad, they were very fun because all of their games were like 5-6, 6-5, 7-6. I mean, Lane Lambert got fired in January. You know how bad you got to be for Lou to make a decision in season?
That's true. The offense wise, at least positively for the Islanders, is going to be a fun line to watch. The con is, I mean, I bring this up every time this happens. Lou made Duclair cut his hair for reasons, and like the Yankees do the same thing, and the Islanders do the same thing, and it really just I hate it. I hate this rule of you gotta be clean shaven, you gotta have this kind of haircut. Give me a break. Give me a break. I'm so over it. Like, and you could tell because Duclair, I understand that Duclair understood that he was going to have to do this when he signed the contract. I'm well aware of that. That doesn't make it better. Because you could tell he, in his Instagram stories when he was cutting his hair, like that hair meant a lot to him. Like
that takes a lot of time to grow.
It takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication. And I understand that he knew, again, he didn't have to sign the contract. He didn't get what anyway. Like, I get all that. That doesn't make the rule better. It's still a ridiculous rule. Lou and the Yankees, for what it's worth, like both of them, they got to get rid of that ridiculous rule. My question to them
the
is...
The Yankees I don't even get because George is dead. Like, it's not... I don't know. Like, the Yankees... The guy who instituted the rule has been dead for 10 years now. Like, we can get rid of that rule anytime we'd like.
They do it because on tradition. But, like, I'm not... I hate the rule. I'm not a fan of it in any capacity. Let the players wear whatever hair, whatever facial hair. That, who cares? Who cares? Are they good at their sport? Are they good at their position? That's all I personally care about. And also, hopefully they're not horrible human beings, but that's beside the point. Also, the biggest question for the Islanders is, what was up with Sorokin last year?
That's a good question. With him? I'm believing injuries because of the reports he had surgery in the offseason. I'm assuming that in conjunction with just being behind an atrocious defense for the first 4 months. And look, I know he put up a great season 2 years ago behind that very same defense and had one of the best goalie seasons we have in the stat tracking era. But it's a fair point. How good is he going to be? And the strength of that team has been the goaltender tandem. Varlamov was genuinely good for them down the stretch this year. Varley's old, and you don't know how much you can reasonably ask for him. We'll see. That's a team where looking how Sorokin is in the preseason might be misguided, but just seeing how he looks in game reps will matter, and I will be curious to see how that goes for them. Next up, after the Islanders, we start getting into teams with reasonable chances. The third team in odds, the Rangers at 100.5. They won the President's Trophy last year, got outclassed when they got to the conference final. They didn't really make a lot of changes. They had the idea of, they had the concepts of a plan and then pulled out of making that plan when they leaked their story a little bit too early. And the person who was the concept of the plan got winds that he was going to be sent to Michigan. Yeah. So I digress. We're never going to know what actually happened because no one is going to want to push any buttons and piss off the general manager / president of the
league. It took for Tony DeAngelo, who, by the way, signed in Russia today, which left Frank Saravalli in shambles. But it took for Tony DeAngelo to hop on a podcast to break down what happened about the whole Georgiev and the Kandra Miller thing from his perspective. Like, we still don't know, we still don't know the whole story. That's been years at this point. We mention this every now and again. It's like, everybody knows this happened, and yet nobody wants to write the story about it.
Nope.
That's the most frustrating aspect about it. Like, maybe behind the scenes, there's a mandate from MSG where if you write the story, you are not allowed at Madison Square Garden again. Maybe that's the mandate, and maybe that's why we haven't seen a tell-all about that, just whatever the hell that was.
A kerfluffle.
Yeah, yeah, sure. But a brouhaha, if you will.
Yeah.
But maybe there's some of that going on. But if there isn't, or if you're a national guy that that's your objective is to write stories, why haven't you wrote that article yet?
I would like to know, man, because very quickly we went from Larry Brooks writing, Chris Drury is taking no prisoners this summer, and I commend his vision for putting Barclay Goodrow on waivers. And then 2 weeks later, it was, well, it'd be too hard to trade him, so we can't trade him. In a matter of 2 weeks. So I'm very clear. I have been very clear from the start. Something very clearly happened. They were very clearly in the process of making something happen. And then Trouba got wind of it before it was done. He hadn't submitted his list yet. Once he submitted his list, he put where only teams that wouldn't be able to afford him, he would accept the trade to. And the Rangers are in a position where they are going to realistically be paying their fifth or sixth best defenseman $8 million per season. The only question I have for the Rangers is, can anyone other than Adam Fox move the puck out of their own zone to their forwards? As much as everyone wants to bemoan their lack of scoring against the Panthers, it's because they spent the entire game in their own zone. When the Rangers are at their best, they are in transition, they are going from defense to offense quickly, they are creating odd man rushes, Panarin is creating space, Zibanejad is creating space. And I am at a point now where I'm not quite ready to say it's over, but I am ready to say that barring something unforeseen, they are probably, their best case scenario is they're one of the last 8 teams left, and it takes something special for them to finally break through. They have a lot of miles. A lot of these guys a lot of their important players are over the age of 30. This is the Shesterkin last year of being cheap. This is the last year, God willing, of Trouba on the team. They're going to have to make real changes after this year. And at this point, I am ready to say the general manager probably doesn't have the vision to make that kind of dramatic transformation because he's been so reticent to make big moves. They'll be fine. They're going to win a lot of regular season games. The regular season has never been the Rangers' issue, and it's why you'll never convince Chris Drury he's not doing a good job as he can, because he'll say, well, we won the President's Trophy, we went to the conference finals. Yeah, but you haven't addressed the issues. We're 3 years removed, and you still haven't found the first-line right winger. We are 4 years into this, and you still don't have a good second pair because Miller and Trouba aren't good together. And at a certain point, there is only so much room. You said it right after the season ended. At a certain point, K'Andre Miller is what he is. There's only so much more time you can give a guy where you say he's developing before he is what he is. I'm getting ready to that point with Braden Schneider as far as being able to actually handle the puck of this is what he is at this point. And look, we're going to do a whole Rangers episode next week.
Yeah.
I understand why everyone is very bearish on them after the offseason they had and the season they just had, because they know the problem, but they did nothing to address it. And that's not an indictment. I think Riley Smith is a massive upgrade over Blake Wheeler. Blake Wheeler wasn't a functional hockey player last year. He wasn't, but the Rangers forced him into that spot. It was a very predictable outcome. Now you hope that Kakko plays well. You hope Riley Smith plays well. And you hope that Zibanejad, Kreider, Riley Smith can make up for the drop-off, because as good as Panarin is, he's not having 120 points and 49 goals again. That's a career year. You don't have that 2 years in a row. You just don't. That's the way averages work.
Well, the pro for the Rangers, and again, we'll do a full Rangers breakdown next week, but the biggest pro for them, it's essentially the same team with Filipino healthy, which is always a positive. He says he's 100%. He's not scared of any contact, which is another added positive with this, because again, when you have the concussion history that players like Hedl have, one of the biggest hurdles is mental, because you're afraid of getting hit. You're afraid of getting, along the boards. You're afraid of any kind of position where you can get hit again. And for Hedl to come out and confidently say, not only am I totally healthy, I'm not scared of anybody. I'm not scared of of being hit. That's big. That's big for the team, sure, but that's really big for Filipino, because we talked about this last season where, forget hockey, we just hope he's okay day to day. So the fact that we went from that to like 12 months later, him saying, "Oh, I don't care if I'm hit. I'm here for it. I love it. I'm 100%, whatever." That's such a massive turnaround. And that's going to inject a lot of confidence, not only into him, but also with the team. And also, like you said, Riley Smith, objectively a much better hockey player right now than Blake Wheeler is. So that's an improvement. The con,
the defense,
daily face-off still has Miller Trouba as a pair together on the second pair, and that is why I need therapy. So the blue line is still a concern, especially with Ryan Lindgren paired up with Fox. That pair did not go well in the playoffs. I understand that Adam Fox was hurt, and that kind of didn't help the issue. And also Ryan Lindgren was hurt as well. But Ryan Lindgren was bad last year. Like, we can be honest about it. He was not great, and hopefully he gets back to form a little bit more this coming season. But that pair just hasn't really found a whole lot of chemistry. And the Rangers love doing this thing where they have this issue, but they refuse to do anything about it because they win regular season games, as you mentioned. So they won't fix that issue. Zach Jones is, he's going to be that secondary puck mover that the Rangers have desperately needed. So, that's going to be fine. The question for the Rangers is, again, and we talked about this for the past 3 or 4 years now, when it comes to the playoffs, can the top dogs actually score at 5-on-5?
No, because they don't drive possession. This is the Rangers' essential issue. They do not play a possession-based game. And when you play actual possession-based games, that there's levels to this game. I said it before the conference final started. Every time the Rangers have ever faced a step up in competition in a conference finals or a cup final, they have come up short. And people told me they won the President's Trophy. Are they not at the top? Regular season and playoffs, very
Not
different.
The same thing. Man.
They are very different styles.
People refuse to believe that. People refuse to think of it that way, which it's silly. At the end of the day, it's silly. It really is.
And the thing is, you watch the way Florida plays, and you watch the way the Rangers play. Watch the way the Oilers were able to play the Panthers. The Oilers play a similar style to what the Rangers like to do. Up and down, tempo, odd man rushes, get the puck to your star players. If Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, 2 of the 6 best players in the world, can't get past Florida playing that way, how are Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin going to do it? It's that simple to me.
Yeah.
It's that simple to me.
100%.
Whenever the Rangers have faced that level up in competition, they have gotten sun. It is that simple. And as much as you like these guys, and that's okay to like these guys, as much as you like these guys, and more, losing is not a moral failure, but if you would like to win a Stanley Cup, at some point you need to address the fact that the guys you have are not good enough. Okay.
Do you want to have these guys on your book club, or do you want to win a Stanley Cup? Like, again, I said this before on the show, but it's one of those situations where you can like everybody that you want, but are they going to bring you the Stanley Cup? Like, I would so much rather lose 5 more games in the regular season, but just be built for the playoffs and win a Stanley Cup. Florida did not win the President's Trophy. They weren't built to win the President's Trophy. They were built for more important things. They were built to win the Stanley Cup, and guess what? They did.
Yeah. All right, next up. The Hurricanes and Devils both have the same over-under total, so we'll start with the Devils because they finished lower last year, obviously. 101.5. That feels a little bit low for both of those teams because the division winner in this division, the last 5 seasons where there's been full seasons, so not counting 21 or 20, 109, 110 points. It's 109.5 is the average division winner, so 101.5 feels a little bit low. The Devils, they addressed their issues. They brought in a goalie. They brought in 2 new defensemen. They are hoping for a fully healthy season from their key players. It's that simple. The one year the Devils were able to stay healthy, both on the back end and up front, they gave the Rangers fits in the first round. They got sunned by the Hurricanes, but they were a very good regular season team, and they destroyed the Rangers in that first round series. My question for the Devils is real simple. If you can you stay healthy, and what do you need to do to maintain that? Because on paper, I think it's pretty close if you go player by player, Devils versus Rangers. I really do think it's pretty close if you go guy by guy. The Devils probably a little bit lighter as far as forward talent than in years past, but they're still pretty good. The Devils, and you have the added benefit of new coach bump, which should help them in Sheldon Keefe. And frankly, anytime you go from like the Lindy Ruff, David Quinn hell tier to even an average coach, you're going to get a noticeable bump in play. I'll be very curious to see how it all shakes out. Markstrom historically has been an every other year goalie, and he was pretty good last year. So I don't know if he's going to be good this year or not. It would be very funny if the Devils spent all this time trying to get a great goalie, and then it was just his off year in the way he alternates. So I think the Devils would be a really good regular season team. I don't know about the playoffs. The Devils, very similarly to the Leafs, the Hurricanes, I'd like to see it. And I think they're very talented, but I do need to see it.
The pros for the Devils, like you said, they fixed a lot of their issues. They got a real goaltender. Jacob Markstrom is
and they have a good backup now because they have Allen too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Jake Allen is nothing to sneeze at. And for somebody that can win, if he starts 20, 25 games, he can win you know, a good start of those. Like, he's somebody that is a capable backup goaltender. He's proved it throughout his career that he can, he probably can't play 60 games for you, but he can, if you tell him just play 20, 25 and, do your best, Jake Allen's your guy. And that's a really solid backup for the Devils. The con is health-wise, they could be fragile.
They are fragile. It's fair to say that
Jack Hughes' shoulder, Dougie Hamilton. Heischer as well. Hamilton coming. I think, what did he miss the whole season with that?
He tore his pec.
Torres pack. Like they're a team that hopefully, obviously we're Rangers fans, but hopefully no one's hurt, like no one gets hurt again for the Devils. Like I don't wish any injuries upon anybody. So hopefully they can stay healthy. Like for their sake, I'd rather not, Nico Heischer walking around with a limp the rest of his life because he's got his foot problems. Like I'd rather not have that happen. But they are a fragile team, and if their top guys start falling with injuries again, that might be a big problem for them. But that's most teams in the NHL. The question is, like you said, can Markstrom hold fort? Can he show why the Devils traded for him? Because he has done it in the past, but he's got a checkered history, as you said, where sometimes he's really good, he's incredible, and then there's other times where he's like, brother, like the beach ball went by you about 6 seconds ago. Where were you? What's going on? What's happening? The Devils would like to know which version of Jacob Markstrom they're getting this year, and for their sake, hopefully it's the first one.
2 years ago, he was the reason the Flames missed the playoffs. They were the last team they were the first team out 2 years ago. They lost, I want to say 20-something games in overtime, where if he just made one save, they probably get a couple more of those wins. Some really just outright atrocious goals against. And then last year, he was genuinely good. We all know that there was conjecture about a trade in season last year that ultimately didn't materialize for whatever reason. But on paper, the Devils are really well-rounded. It's simply a matter of how healthy everyone is. I know Luke Hughes is in a sling at the moment. He's dealing with some upper body injury. He may not start the regular season on time, but you got him, you got Nemec, you got Hamilton, you got Siegenthaler. You brought in, what's his face? Brendan Dillon. You have a little bit more depth on your back end. Yeah, you brought in Brett Pesce as well. Forgot about him, in all honesty. They've got a really talented team. I think they put it together, and I think they're going to be pretty good. Last up, the Hurricanes, who have finished first or second in this division for much of the last almost 10 years at this point under Rod as head coach. They've lost a lot of guys over the last handful of seasons. They really, I don't want to say screwed the pooch, but whatever happened with Gensel there was very weird, and frankly, they probably should have tried to figure out, because you were never going to replace him in the aggregate. Like, they will be a fine regular season team, but the Hurricanes are even a lower end version of the Rangers, where whenever they play teams better than them, their best players just aren't good enough. And, Kreider did it by himself in Game 6 last year against them. They are a fine regular season team, but I am ready to say that Carolina probably needs to recalibrate. I think they probably need to take a step back and try and retool their roster a bit, because though I like their pieces, I like Jarvis, I like Natchez, I like Aho, I like Svechnikov, it just hasn't come together for them for whatever reason. And that's not an indictment of individuals as talent. We talk about this all the time. You can be a talented hockey team, but if the pieces don't work, they just don't work. And I feel like that's kind of the case. You look at Carolina, you've overhauled, you have to replace your entire second pair because Shea and Pesce are with other teams. Orlov and Chatfield should be fine, but Gostisbehere and Sean Walker, not great. You look at that bottom six, once you get past Jordan Staal, it's not very good. They'll be a fine regular season team, but a team that's projecting Roslovic on their second line, I'm not particularly worried about. They're a good possession team, but we all know at this point that their possession numbers are influenced by their style, so you can take them with a bit of a grain of salt. They're fine. I think they're going to probably, in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if they won the division again, just because they're such a good regular season team. But I don't think this is a Stanley Cup caliber team.
No, I mean, the biggest pro is they're still going to be favored by all the sports books because they're the all-time, all analytics, no context team. Like, the sports books love giving the Hurricanes the division, all the, I don't know what the line is, but I'm going to make one out of a hat, 118.5 over under, just some
101.5.
The sports books love giving the Hurricanes a bunch off the rip, and that a lot of that is off of their style. They love that, so much quantity, not a whole lot of quality. We're just gonna hold on to the puck the whole game and take it away from us. We dare you, but we're also not only gonna score a whole lot because none of our chances are all that scary to face. And that's the style of play that they have. I mean, the biggest con is like you said, the team's depth is not great. Daily Faceoff has Jesperi Kotkaniemi as their second line center, which is a problem. That's a problem. Objectively, that's a problem. I even if like I'm higher on Kotkaniemi than other people are, that's still a problem if you're Carolina. And the biggest question for me is, except for the goaltending with Freddie Anderson, who's sometimes has health issues, and other times, like we saw in Game 6, attendance up some goals. Kochetkov is also kind of like he's a hotter, colder goaltender where he has these moments where he shines and he plays really well for Carolina, and then he has moments where he plays the Rangers and the Rangers kind of just make mincemeat out of him, and that's a strange thing to be if you're a goalie, where you're okay most of the time, but then you play certain teams and they just make you look very silly, which is strange. But the other biggest question is, are they going to beat the second round exit allegations? Like, what are they? And if of all the teams that were going to do it in Carolina, this isn't the one to do it.
Last year was their year.
Yeah.
That was as good a roster as you were going to be able to have under the salary cap restrictions you're facing. You had Pesce, you had Brady Shea. That's arguably the best second pair in the entire NHL last year. You added Gensel to a first line that was already humming, where him, Jarvis, and Aho were just outright dominant at 5-on-5, something close to 60-something% of the expected goals and high danger chances. If that doesn't come together, I don't know what to tell you. And I don't want to say it's the exact same deal as Pittsburgh, but it's kind of a similar deal where Rod very clearly is a good coach and the players are very clearly talented, but something about this recipe is not working right now. And until you can get a honest and deep-rooted account of why, I personally, and this has been my opinion for a while, I think it's an ownership thing where they just refuse to invest in their quality players and keep piecemealing guys together through the aggregate. You can replace Dougie Hamilton with Tony DeAngelo and get close counting stats production, but you're not going to have the same caliber of player. Those are one of them is in Russia learning Russian right now.
Frank Saravelli, like you mentioned, he like we mentioned, was dumbfounded that he was a free agent.
SKA St. Petersburg did all of their due diligence. Don't you worry. They did all of their due diligence. All right. Let's rattle them off. Give me your 8 in order for the Metro.
So I lost my notes there for a second. So this is a strange division because Philly's kind of a wild card. As of right now, I do have Columbus 8th. I think I have the Flyers at 7th just because I don't know what their goalie situation is going to look like. Okay. I have Washington 6th. I have Pittsburgh 5th. Islanders 4th. Hurricanes 3rd. The Devils at 2nd, and the Rangers are 1st. Rangers are probably still going to win the division. Probably still going to maybe win the conference. But I like that. That's the kind of prediction where they might win the division, but I kind of don't care. Like,
it doesn't matter.
Yes, but and this is a team like the Islanders or Pittsburgh would love to win the division. That'd be great for them. But like, I don't care if the Rangers specifically win the division because I want to see what they're going to do come playoff time. That to me is the most important thing. And I just don't want to hear people saying the same thing that they said last year. Oh, they won the division. Oh, they were the best team in the NHL in the regular season. So, they just got unlucky. All good. They can run it back. It'll be better this time. Unless until you figure out fundamentally what your problems are and why you failed again at the same time and fix them, you can win as many games in the regular season as you want. It's not going to change come May and come June.
I agree with you. I have the Blue Jackets, the Flyers, I have the Penguins in 6th, Washington, the Islanders, the Devils, the Hurricanes, and then the Rangers. So relatively similar. I think the argument for Carolina and why I trust them a smidge more than the Devils is I've seen them do it. And look, I'm very high on the Devils. 2 years ago, coming out of that first round series, I said they definitely win a Stanley Cup within the next 5 years. I think they probably will, in all honesty. But I trust Carolina a smidge more just based on the regular season consistency. Whereas the Devils, a lot of new players in one off season, new goalie, new coach. probably take them a little while to get going, and then they rattle off, an 11-game winning streak in like December, and they firmly get themselves back in the playoff mix. So both of us only have the Capitals as the team that made the playoffs last year coming out. That'll do it for season previews. When we come back next week, we'll tackle the Rangers. And after that, we'll be looking down the barrel of regular season NHL hockey 2 weeks from now. So
we're so back, baby.
I wouldn't say that. The horrors are back, maybe. Not we. The horrors are back. But that'll do it for this week's episode of Liberty Blue. Hopefully, everyone can take a second, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please throw the show a 5-star review. If you are watching over on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button, hit the alarm bell so you get a notification whenever new content goes live. Leave us a comment. Let us know the order you think the Metropolitan teams are going to finish in and how good you think the Rangers will be this year. We will talk to you guys next week.
Later.